All she wanted was a peaceful Christmas, surrounded by smiles and good intentions, but a single whisper behind a door was all it took for everything to start falling apart. Secrets came to light, revealing betrayals hidden beneath designer gowns. And in the midst of all the luxury, a simple woman discovered that her pain would be the night's main event. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Now, let's continue. The night of December 24th in New York City brought a biting winter chill, but inside the Anderson mansion on the Upper East Side, central heating kept the air at a comfortable temperature that contrasted sharply with the tension beginning to build. Megan adjusted the white silk dress that fell elegantly over her 6-month baby bump. She had chosen the style so carefully, wanting to be perfect for the Christmas party her husband's family hosted every year. It was an event eagerly anticipated by New York's high society, an Anderson tradition that brought together business tycoons, politicians, and influential socialites. She studied her reflection in the bedroom mirror. At 32, Megan still had the delicate features of someone raised with simplicity in a small town in Ohio before marrying Richard Anderson and moving to the city. Her brown hair was swept into a low chignon, and she wore only a pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother. Simple, discreet, always trying to fit into this world of luxury that had never truly been hers. Downstairs she could hear the murmur of the first guests arriving. The string quartet was already playing Christmas carols with sophisticated arrangements. Waitstaff circulated with trays of French champagne and elaborate canapés. Everything was orchestrated by her mother-in-law, Helen, a 60-year-old woman who had ruled the house and the family with an iron fist since being widowed over a decade ago. Megan took a deep breath and carefully descended the stairs, holding onto the banister. The pregnancy made her movements slower, more cautious. When she reached the grand hall, decorated with a Christmas tree nearly 15 feet tall, laden with imported ornaments and twinkling lights, she scanned the room for Richard. She found her husband standing with a group of businessmen, gesturing animatedly as he discussed deals. He didn't even notice her arrival. Helen, impeccable in a dark green gown, and jewels that seemed to weigh more than she did, approached Megan with that cold smile that never reached her eyes. "Darling, I'm so glad you came down. The guests are arriving. Try to be a bit more sociable this time, won't you? You know how important it is for the family's business that we make a good impression." Megan just nodded, already used to her mother-in-law's digs about how she would never be good enough for their last name. The next few hours dragged on in a series of empty greetings and superficial conversations. Megan smiled, shook hands, and accepted congratulations on her pregnancy, but she felt invisible, just a decorative piece in this ostentatious setting. Richard remained distant, too busy with his important contacts to even glance in his wife's direction. It was when Megan went to the powder room around 10 o'clock that everything began to unravel. As she returned through a side hallway of the mansion, she heard voices coming from Richard's study. The door was slightly ajar. She immediately recognized her husband's voice, but there was another woman's voice in there, one she couldn't place. She crept closer, her heart pounding. "My love, I can't stand pretending at this ridiculous party anymore. When are you finally going to handle this and be with me for good?" The woman's voice was sweet, but laced with impatience. Megan felt the world spin. "Sabrina, we've been over this. I need time. You know she's pregnant. I can't just—" Richard's voice, so familiar, sounded tired but also far too intimate. Megan couldn't move. She stood there, paralyzed, listening to her husband talk about her as if she were a problem to be solved, an obstacle in his plans. When she finally managed to pull herself away, her hands were shaking. She returned to the main hall, trying to maintain her composure, but she felt like she was going to fall apart at any moment. Minutes later, Richard emerged from the study, followed by a woman Megan vaguely recognized. Sabrina Foster, a lawyer from the family's firm, young, beautiful, always impeccably dressed. She greeted a few guests naturally, as if nothing had happened. Megan felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. She tried to slip away, to find a quiet corner where she could think, breathe, and process what she had just discovered. But Helen, appeared at her side, gripping her arm firmly. "Megan, where have you been? I need you to stand next to Richard for the photos. Vogue is here." Megan wanted to scream, to say she couldn't take it anymore, but she just let herself be led to where her husband was posing with important businessmen. The night continued in that painful charade. Megan watched Richard and Sabrina exchange knowing glances across the room. She watched her mother-in-law command everything with arrogance, treating the staff with harshness and the guests with calculated flattery. She felt suffocated in this environment where everyone wore perfect masks. It was close to midnight when it all exploded. Megan was near the dessert table when Sabrina approached, holding a glass of champagne. The two women stood face to face for the first time that night. Sabrina's eyes glinted with a mix of defiance and contempt. "Do you really think he still loves you?" Sabrina's voice was low, but each word was like a blade. "Megan, you're pathetic. A small-town girl who thinks she belongs in this world just because she put a ring on her finger." Megan felt her cheeks burn. She tried to walk away, but Sabrina continued, her voice now louder, drawing the attention of nearby guests. "He told me everything about you, you know. How insecure you are, how needy, always complaining, how trapped he feels. And this baby, just another one of your traps to keep him, wasn't it?" People started to turn and watch the scene unfold. Megan felt dozens of eyes on her, but she couldn't move, couldn't react. Sabrina took a step forward. "You know what's saddest? It's that you don't even realize you've already lost. He's mine, Megan, he always has been, and you're just nothing." That's when Helen joined the scene, but not to defend her daughter-in-law, on the contrary. She looked at Megan with her characteristic coldness and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I think you'd better leave, Megan. You're making an unnecessary scene and embarrassing everyone." Megan tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't come out. "It's not... I didn't... It was her who..." Sabrina raised her glass and, with a calculated, cruel motion, threw the champagne in Megan's face. The cold liquid ran down her face, her neck, staining her white dress. The hall fell completely silent. Someone started filming with their phone. Megan stood there, motionless, humiliated before all those judging eyes. Richard finally approached, but his words were even more devastating than the champagne on her face. "Megan, for God's sake, you always have to make a scene. Why don't you just go upstairs and change? You're embarrassing everyone." He didn't even ask what had happened, showed no concern. He was just annoyed with her, as if she were the one at fault. Helen added, "It's true. You're being hysterical. Go upstairs now before you completely ruin the party." People began to whisper. Megan looked around, searching for a sympathetic glance, for someone to defend her, but found only morbid curiosity and embarrassment. New York's elite loved a good scandal, as long as it didn't involve them directly. That's when Sabrina delivered the final blow. She took out her phone and showed it to everyone standing nearby. "Look at this. It was recorded 3 weeks ago, right after their wedding anniversary." On the screen was an intimate video of Sabrina and Richard, clearly filmed in a hotel room. "The child she's carrying might be his, but his heart has always been mine." Megan felt her legs give way. Someone took Sabrina's phone and started passing the video around. In minutes, it would be on every phone at the party, and on the internet. Megan looked at Richard, expecting him to deny it, to defend his wife and the child they were expecting. But he just looked away, ashamed, yes, but not for her. Ashamed of her. "Look what you made me do, Megan, with your constant neediness, your insecurity. You suffocated me so much I had to find air somewhere else." Helen shook her head in approval. "I always knew you weren't strong enough for this world, girl. Now get up those stairs and get out of our sight. At least have that much dignity." Megan felt something break inside her. It wasn't just her heart. It was something deeper. It was the image she had of herself, of her marriage, of her life. All a lie, all a facade. She placed a hand on her belly where the baby was moving. She felt a sharp, different kind of pain. Panic shot through her chest. "The baby. Please, no." Her legs began to buckle. She could still hear someone shout to call an ambulance, but the voices seemed to be getting farther away. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was Sabrina's look of contempt and Richard's indifference. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on a sofa in the mansion's library. A doctor who was a guest at the party was checking her vital signs. "Megan, you had a spike in your blood pressure, but the baby is fine. Can you hear me?" Megan nodded, tears streaming silently down her face. Around her, a few guests watched with a curiosity they disguised as concern. The doctor helped Megan sit up slowly. "You need to calm down for the baby's sake." Megan looked through the library door and saw the hall still filled with guests. The party was continuing as if nothing had happened. The quartet had started playing again. People were laughing and talking. Her suffering was just another passing entertainment on this Christmas night. It was then that she heard the sound of the front door being thrown open. Firm footsteps echoed through the entrance hall. Voices gradually fell silent. Megan recognized that walk before she even saw its owner. Her entire body recognized it. A shiver of mixed relief and fear ran down her spine. General August. Thompson entered the main hall with the erect posture that decades of a military career had molded. At 65, he was still imposing, his grey hair cut short, his dark eyes having seen far more than this spoiled elite could ever imagine. He wore a simple dark suit without ostentation, but his presence filled the room in a way that all the luxury there could not. The silence that fell was absolute. Everyone knew who General Thompson was. A hero of special operations, nationally respected. A man who had never sold his honor or bowed to power or money, and he was here at the Andersons' party with an expression that made even the most arrogant shrink back. "Where is my daughter?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that needed no volume. Helen stepped forward, trying to maintain her hostess posture. "General, what a surprise. We didn't know you were coming. Megan is resting. She felt unwell and—" He cut her off with a single look. "I didn't ask you. I asked where my daughter is. And I want to see with my own eyes if she's all right." Richard tried to intervene, extending a hand for a handshake. "General, I know who you are, Richard Anderson, and I know exactly what kind of man you are. Now take me to my daughter. Now." From the library, Megan managed to stand with the doctor's help and walked to the door. "Dad." Her voice came out weak, broken. When the general saw his daughter, her dress stained, her eyes red from crying, her face still damp, something in his expression shifted. The military coldness gave way to something far more dangerous. Contained fury. He walked to Megan and wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if she were made of glass. "My girl, I'm here now. No one is going to hurt you anymore." Megan collapsed into her father's arms, all the defenses she had tried to maintain finally crumbling. General Thompson held her, then looked out at everyone in the hall. His gaze swept over every face, every person who had watched his daughter's humiliation and done nothing. "Someone is going to explain to me, calmly, what happened here tonight. And choose your words carefully, because my patience has run out." The silence that followed was thick with tension, and Megan, even in the midst of her pain and despair, felt for the first time that night that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. "Enjoying this story? Tell me what you think of it and how you think it will end." General August Thompson didn't need to shout to command respect. His presence alone made even the most arrogant choose their words carefully. He stood there, in the center of the Anderson mansion's grand hall, with Megan still held in his arms, as dozens of shifting gazes tried to avoid direct contact with the eyes that had commanded operations where death was a constant companion. Richard was the first to try to regain control of the situation. "General, I understand your concern, but this is a family matter," and his voice sounded less confident than usual. The general cut him off with a mere gesture of his hand. "A family matter? My daughter was publicly humiliated in front of hundreds of people, and you call that a family matter?" He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "How many phones in here recorded what happened? How many have already shared it on social media? And you talk about privacy." Helen stepped forward, trying to reassert her authority in her own home. "General Thompson, with all due respect, your daughter had a hysterical outburst and embarrassed our guests. She obviously needs psychological help. We can't—" The general's glare cut her off like a razor. "You have the audacity to call my daughter hysterical? after allowing her to be attacked, assaulted, and humiliated in your own home. You, the woman who calls herself the mother of the man she's married to." The silence that fell was so dense you could hear the rustle of the uncomfortable guest's clothing. Sabrina, who had been lingering in the background, tried to slip away discreetly toward the exit. "Not so fast." The general's voice froze her in place. "You, young lady, get back here now." Sabrina turned slowly, trying to maintain an expression of innocence. "I didn't do anything. She's the one who started making a scene." The general walked until he was face to face with her, and even without touching her, Sabrina took 2 steps back. "You threw a drink in my pregnant daughter's face. You showed intimate videos of her with a married man in front of all these people. You called her nothing." His voice was low, controlled, but every word carried the weight of decades of military discipline containing a furious rage. One of the guests, a well-known businessman, dared to intervene. "General, perhaps it would be best to discuss this in private. We don't want—" The general turned to him. "Don't want what? The truth to be exposed? For everyone here to see what kind of people you really are. You all love your exclusive clubs, your charity galas, your photos in society magazines. But when a woman is attacked in front of you, when a pregnant woman is humiliated and assaulted, you just watch as if it were entertainment." The discomfort was now palpable. Some guests began to whisper among themselves. Others checked their phones, realizing that the video of Meghan's humiliation was already going viral on social media. Comments were starting to appear, and contrary to what they might have expected, many were not in the Andersons' favor. Meghan, still leaning on her father's arm, felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. She was seeing her worst moment being shared by thousands of people, her pain exposed as a spectacle. The general noticed his daughter trembling. "Easy, my girl. Breathe. We're going to handle this." He signaled to the doctor, who was still present. "Doctor, please stay with my daughter for a moment." The general then walked over to Richard, who for the first time that night looked genuinely apprehensive. "How long?" The question caught Richard off guard. "What? How long have you been cheating on my daughter with this woman?" Richard opened his mouth, closed it, and struggled for words. It's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's simple." "How long?" Sabrina, regaining some of her arrogance, interjected. 2 years. Richard and I have been together for 2 years. And he was going to leave her anyway. That baby was just her desperate attempt to hold on to him. The general turned to her slowly. 2 years. So for all that time, the two of you deceived my daughter, made her believe she had a marriage, a family. And you, he looked at Richard, you let your wife go to doctor's appointments alone, plan the baby's nursery alone, dream of a future you already knew wouldn't exist. Helen tried once more to defend her son. "General, you don't understand. Marriages are complicated. Sometimes people grow apart and—" "Complicated." The general stared her down. "Mom, do you know what I find complicated? Rescue operations in enemy territory, hostage negotiations, disarming explosives with seconds on the clock. That's complicated. Cheating on your own wife and humiliating her in public isn't complicated. It's just cowardice." That's when the general took his phone out of his pocket. "You all think you're so clever, don't you? Think you control the narrative, that you can manipulate the truth. But you forgot one small detail." He swiped his finger across the screen and then connected the device to the giant television on one of the hall's walls, used to display family videos at events. "You forgot that every rich person's mansion has a security system with cameras." The blood drained from Richard's face. "General, that footage is private. You can't—" "Private?" The general gave a humorless smile. "Like the videos of my daughter being humiliated that are already all over the internet. Private like that?" He pressed play. The screen lit up, showing footage of the party from that very night, but from angles the guests hadn't noticed. Strategically placed security cameras. The first video showed Sabrina approaching Meghan with clear intent. There was no sound, but the images were crystal clear. It showed Meghan trying to walk away, Sabrina blocking her, the words being said, and then the champagne being deliberately thrown in Megan's face. The second video showed Helen approaching, not to defend her daughter-in-law, but to join the attack. The disdainful expressions, the contemptuous gestures. The third video showed Richard arriving, and instead of protecting his wife, blaming her. It showed him looking away as Sabrina displayed the intimate video. The silence in the hall was now absolute. Everyone watched the footage that told a very different story from the version Richard and Helen had tried to sell. It wasn't Megan who was hysterical. It was Megan being systematically attacked and humiliated, while her husband and mother-in-law watched with approval. One of the guests, an influential businesswoman named Patricia, was the first to break the silence. "My God, we just stood there and watched this barbarity. Megan, I'm so sorry. I should have done something." Others began to speak up, genuine indignation replacing their earlier discomfort. Phones were raised again, but now to delete the videos they had recorded of the humiliation and to record the general's response. Sabrina tried to defend herself. "That footage doesn't prove anything. She provoked me first." The general showed another video, this one recorded earlier in the evening. It showed Sabrina and Richard in the study, in intimate moments, laughing as they planned how they would handle Megan if she found out. It showed Sabrina clearly saying she wanted to humiliate Megan in front of everyone. Richard was pale. "General, I can explain." "No." The general's voice was firm. "You can't. There is no explanation that justifies what you did. You didn't just cheat on your wife. You conspired to destroy her publicly. You allowed her to be attacked while she carries your child. Helen tried one last gambit. This is an invasion of privacy. I'll sue you for what? For protecting my daughter? For exposing the truth? Go ahead and sue. But in the meantime, the entire country will see this footage, and they will judge for themselves who the real villains of this story are." That's when the authorities arrived. 2 police officers who were on patrol in the neighborhood, alerted by a guest who had realized the gravity of the situation, entered the mansion. The lead detective, a middle-aged man who knew the general's reputation, greeted him with respect. "General Thompson, we received a call about an assault." The general pointed to Megan. "My daughter, 6 months pregnant, was physically and psychologically assaulted in this house. I have all the proof on video." Sabrina tried to protest. "It was just a glass of champagne. I didn't hurt anyone." The detective stared at her. "Throwing liquid on someone is assault, ma'am. And from what I understand, there's also defamation, slander, and distribution of intimate content without consent. You're going to have to come with me to give a statement." Richard stepped forward. "Detective, this is a misunderstanding. I can handle this." The general stopped him. "You're not handling anything. My daughter will be pressing formal charges against everyone involved, and this footage will be turned over to the proper authorities." Richard, the man who had always controlled everything with money and influence, realized that this time there was no escape. Helen, for the first time that night, looked truly shaken. "General, please, think of our family's reputations. Think of the scandal." "I did. I thought my daughter deserved to be protected. I thought she deserved justice. As for your reputation," his voice was hard, "you destroyed your own reputation the moment you decided to attack a defenseless woman. Now you'll deal with the consequences." Megan, still being supported by the doctor, watched everything with a mixture of shock and relief. Seeing her father defend her so fiercely, exposing the truth she hadn't had the strength to reveal herself, sparked something inside her. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the slow, painful understanding that she deserved none of this, that she wasn't the problem. Patricia, the businesswoman, approached Megan cautiously. "Megan, dear, I have excellent contacts for lawyers who specialize in family law. When you're ready, we can talk, and please forgive me for not acting sooner." Other people began to approach, offering support, apologizing for having remained silent. The detective spoke briefly with the general and then turned to Sabrina. "Ma'am, you'll need to accompany me to the station, and Mr. Richard Anderson, you as well, to give a statement." Richard tried to argue about his lawyers, about how absurd this was, but his words sounded empty even to himself. As Sabrina was led out of the mansion by the police, she still tried to maintain an air of superiority. "This will go nowhere. You'll... see?" But her voice trembled and everyone noticed. Megan watched her leave and felt something strange. It wasn't satisfaction at Sabrina's arrest. It was pity. Pity for someone so empty inside that she needed to destroy others to feel important. The general returned to his daughter's side. She was now sitting on a sofa, sipping water with the doctor's help. "My girl, do you want to go to the hospital for a full checkup? The doctor here said the baby is fine, but..." Megan shook her head slightly. "I just want to get out of here, Dad. Please, send me out of this place." The general nodded. "Let's go. I'll take you to my house in the Berkshires. You'll have peace there to recover." Helen, who had remained silent since the police arrived, spoke one last time. "She's married to my son. She has obligations. That child is an Anderson." The general stared at her with an expression that made the woman flinch. "That child is my grandchild, and he will grow up far away from people like you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take care of my daughter. Something you should have done from the beginning." As the general helped Megan stand and led her toward the exit, the remaining guests watched in silence. The Andersons' Christmas party, traditionally the most anticipated event of the year for New York's elite, would go down in history. But not for the reasons Helen would have wanted. Outside, the night was still cold and crisp. Megan breathed in the night air and felt as if she were breathing for the first time in a long while. Her father helped her into the car, carefully adjusting the seatbelt around her belly. "It's going to be okay, my girl. I promise." Megan looked at her father, and for the first time on that terrible night managed a small smile. As the car pulled away from the mansion, Megan looked out the back window. She could see the party lights still on, the people still talking, the world carrying on as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. She had changed. And as she placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby move, Megan made a silent promise. Her child would grow up knowing he had a strong mother, a mother who had been through the worst night of her life and survived, a mother who would never again let anyone silence her voice. General August Thompson's house in the Berkshires was in a quiet area, surrounded by pine trees with a view of the mountains. It was a refuge he had bought years ago after retiring from active duty, a place where he could find peace after decades of tension and danger. Now, on this Christmas morning, the house was sheltering his daughter and the grandchild who was yet to be born. Megan woke up late, her body still heavy from the stress of the previous night. It took her a few seconds to remember where she was, to process that she was no longer in the Anderson mansion, no longer trapped in that world of falsehood and cruelty. Sunlight filtered through the linen curtains, soft and comforting. She placed a hand on her belly and felt the baby move, a reminder that life went on. She came downstairs slowly and found her father in the kitchen, making coffee. The general, always so imposing and serious in public, had a side few people ever saw. At home, he was just a father worried about his daughter. "Good morning, did you sleep well?" Megan sat at the table. "Better than I expected, thank you, Dad, for everything." He placed a cup of chamomile tea in front of her, caffeine-free because of the pregnancy. "You don't have to thank me. It's my job to protect you." They had breakfast in comfortable silence. It was Megan who finally broke it. "What's going to happen now? With Richard, with Sabrina, with everything?" The general took a sip of his own coffee. "Sabrina was charged with assault, slander, defamation, and distribution of intimate content. Richard is under investigation as well. The lawyer I hired for you, Jessica Miller, is excellent. She's already handling everything." Megan nodded, still processing. "And the internet? I saw last night that the video was everywhere," the general finished. "Yes, but so is the truth. The footage I showed at the party was also released. Now people know what really happened. You're not the villain in this story, Megan. You're the victim who refused to stay silent." Over the next few hours, Megan began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. Her father's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists wanting interviews, lawyers offering their services, public figures expressing their support. The case had gone national. The hashtag #DachaJustice for Megan was trending on social media. Jessica Miller arrived at noon. She was a woman in her 40s, with short hair, a confident posture, and a determined gaze. A specialist in family law and violence against women, she had an impeccable reputation for never losing a major case. "Megan, it's a pleasure to meet you. Even under these circumstances, I want you to know that we are going to fight for justice, and we are going to win." They talked for hours. Megan told her everything from the beginning of her marriage to the night before. Jessica took meticulous notes, occasionally asking specific questions. When Megan finished, the lawyer closed her notebook and looked directly at her. "Megan, you have an incredibly strong case. The evidence is irrefutable. Richard not only cheated on you, but he conspired to publicly humiliate you. Sabrina committed clear crimes, and Helen was complicit in all of it." "And the baby?" Megan touched her belly. "He's going to try to use my son against me." Jessica shook her head. "Don't worry. With his history of behavior, no judge would grant shared custody without supervision. And considering he maintained an extramarital affair for 2 years and actively participated in your public humiliation, his rights will be severely limited. You will have primary custody. I'm sure of it." While Megan was talking with her lawyer back in New York, the Andersons' world was collapsing. Richard woke up that Christmas morning bombarded by messages, company shareholders demanding explanations, business partners terminating contracts, members of his golf club suggesting he take a temporary leave of absence. His mother, Helen, was locked in her room, refusing to answer calls or see visitors. Sabrina was in an even worse situation. She had spent the night at the police station and was only released on Christmas morning after posting a high bail. But the arrest was the least of her problems. The law firm where she worked had already issued a statement disassociating itself from her. Her social media profiles were flooded with outraged comments. Brands she represented as a digital influencer cancelled their contracts. In less than 24 hours, her carefully constructed life was in ruins. The turning point came 3 days later, when an investigative journalist published an explosive report. She had discovered that Sabrina and Richard had not only been in a relationship for 2 years, but that Sabrina had been strategically hired by the law firm that served the Andersons precisely to get access to Richard. Furthermore, there was evidence that Helen had known about the affair from the beginning and approved of it. As she considered Megan unworthy of the family name due to her humble origins, the report included text messages between Helen and Sabrina, planning ways to make Megan give up on the marriage of her own accord. It even included a conversation where Sabrina suggested that if Megan were pregnant, it would be easier to make her seem emotionally unstable. The cruelty of the messages shocked even the most cynical readers. Megan read the report at her father's house with Jessica by her side. She felt sickened as she realized the level of manipulation she had been subjected to. "They planned this. They planned to destroy me." Jessica placed a hand on her shoulder. "And now they're reaping the consequences. This report changes everything, Megan. Now it's not just about cheating or assault. It's about conspiracy, premeditation, calculated cruelty." The consequences were swift and severe. Richard was removed from his position as CEO of the family company by the shareholders themselves. The police investigation was expanded to include the possible use of privileged information obtained by Sabrina through the law firm. Helen was formally removed from the boards of all the charities where she served. The Anderson family, which for generations had been synonymous with prestige in New York, was now synonymous with scandal. Megan, however, was focused on something else: the baby. At her routine prenatal checkup, she found out that the stress of the past week had caused premature contractions. Nothing serious yet, but it was a concern. The doctor was clear. "Megan, you need absolute bed rest. No stress, no worries. Your baby needs you to be calm." The general took on the role of guardian. He limited visitors, screened calls, and ensured his daughter had peace. Megan spent her days reading, walking in the garden, and talking to the baby. Slowly, she began to reconnect with herself, with the woman she had been before she got lost in her marriage to Richard. It was during one of these walks, 2 weeks after Christmas, that Megan finally cried. Not from pain or humiliation, but from grief. Grief for the marriage that had never really existed. for the man she thought she had loved, but who was just an illusion, for the family she had dreamed of having with the Andersons. Her father found her sitting on a garden bench, tears streaming silently down her face. He sat beside her without a word, just offering his presence. After a few minutes, Megan spoke. "I was so stupid, Dad. How did I not see it? How did I not realize?" The general shook his head. "You weren't stupid. You trusted. You loved. That's not weakness. It's courage. What they did, the manipulation, the cruelty, that is weakness." Megan looked at her father. "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust anyone again? I think you'll learn to trust yourself first. And when that happens, you'll be ready to decide whether or not you want to let someone else into your life. But for now, you need to focus on you and my grandchild." In New York, Richard finally reached out to Megan. Not in person, he wouldn't have the courage to face the general, but through lawyers. He wanted to talk about the baby, about the future, about the possibility of reconciliation. Jessica showed Richard's lawyer's letter to Megan. "He's desperate. The company is sinking. His reputation is destroyed. Sabrina left him. He thinks you're the solution to his problems." Megan read the letter with a calmness that surprised her. "He talks about the baby as if he's a piece of property, as if I should go back because he's lonely and sorry now. He doesn't once mention what he did to me. He doesn't apologize for what he caused. He just wants me to clean up the mess he made." Jessica smiled. "So what's your answer?" Megan thought for a long moment. "Tell him the baby will have the last name Thompson, not Anderson, that he can request supervised visitation after the birth, if he can prove he's in therapy and emotionally fit to be a father. And as for reconciliation," she paused, "there is no possibility. That chapter of my life is over." Jessica nodded in approval. "Perfect. I'll draft the formal response. Megan, you're finding your voice, and it's a strong one." When Megan was alone after the lawyer left, she looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a different woman from the one who had been humiliated at the Christmas party. She still bore the scars of the pain, but she also carried something new: determination, strength, resilience. She placed a hand on her belly, where the baby was growing strong and healthy, despite everything. Her son would be her new beginning. Not a way to hold on to a man who never truly loved her, but a reason to become the best version of herself. A reason to fight, to grow, to show that she was so much more than those who tried to destroy her could ever imagine. That evening, Megan had dinner with her father on the porch, watching the stars. Over the mountains, the cold January air in the Berkshires was comforting. The general poured her a natural juice and got a beer for himself. They toasted in silence. "Dad, thank you for never giving up on me, even when I had given up on myself." He smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "Daughter, I spent my life defending this country, but defending you has always been, and always will be, my most important mission." One afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. Clara, her best friend from college with whom she had lost touch after her marriage. "Megan, I came as soon as I saw the news." Clara hugged her tightly. "Why did you never tell me what you were going through?" Megan felt the tears return. "I was ashamed. I thought it was my fault." Clara held her friend's face in her hands. "None of this was your fault. None of it. He chose to cheat on you. He chose to humiliate you. Those were his choices, not yours." The two spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and reminiscing about their college days when Megan still dreamed of being a literature professor. Maybe there was still time to achieve her own dreams. Clara also brought news from the outside world. "You've become a symbol, Megan. There are thousands of women sharing their own stories, inspired by you." Megan didn't know how to feel about that. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to be herself. But she recognized that her story had touched many people. In the following days, Megan began to think about the future in a way she hadn't been able to before. She talked to Jessica about her financial rights. As the wronged spouse, she was entitled to a significant portion of the couple's assets. The lawyer was clear. "You don't have to accept crumbs, Megan. You have a right to half of everything that was built during the marriage. and considering the circumstances, I can fight for more." Megan thought long and hard about it. She didn't want the Andersons' money for revenge, but she also recognized that she would need financial security to raise her child. She decided to accept only what was fair, no more, no less. She wanted to rebuild her life with dignity, not with the spoils of war. The general noticed his daughter's transformation. She was getting stronger every day. "You don't need me to protect you anymore. You've learned to protect yourself." Megan looked at her father with teary eyes. "I'll always need you, Dad, but I'm learning to be strong." The general hugged his daughter with pride. While Megan was rebuilding her life, the repercussions in New York continued. Richard lost major contracts. Helen was removed from institutions. Sabrina faced ethics investigations. The consequences were real and lasting. Megan followed this news with a mixed feeling. She didn't take pleasure in their downfall, but she also recognized that the consequences were necessary. Actions had results. Cruelty had a price. And maybe, just maybe, others would think twice before publicly humiliating someone after seeing what happened to the Andersons. One afternoon, Megan was in the garden when she felt a strong contraction, different from the others. She called for her father urgently. They rushed to the local hospital where the doctors confirmed it. The baby was getting ready to be born. It was still a little early, but within a safe window. Megan was going to be a mother soon. That night in the hospital, as she waited, Megan wrote a letter to her unborn son. She told him about everything she had been through, about the difficult choices, about the love she already felt for him. She wrote about strength, about dignity, about never accepting being treated with disrespect. She wrote about new beginnings and how life always offers a second chance when we have the courage to take it. When she finished the letter, she folded it carefully and put it away. One day, when her son was old enough to understand, she would show it to him, and he would know that he was born not from a perfect marriage but from a woman who chose to fight for her own worth, and that was a legacy worth leaving. Meanwhile, in New York, the lights of the Anderson mansion were out. The grand Christmas tree was still up in the living room, but no one looked at it anymore. Richard walked alone through the empty rooms, realizing too late the price of his choices. Sabrina was in another state, trying to rebuild a life away from the spotlight and the shame. Helen remained locked in her quarters, unable to accept that her world of privilege and power had crumbled. And Megan, the woman everyone had tried to silence, was finding her voice for the first time. A voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. A voice that spoke of dignity, of strength, of rebirth. Her story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 3 months later, on a sunny April morning, Megan woke up to regular contractions. This time, it wasn't a false alarm. It was time. The general drove her to the hospital with the calm of someone who had faced far more stressful situations, but Megan could see the worry in his eyes. "It's going to be okay, honey, you're strong, and I'll be here the whole time." Labor lasted 12 hours. Hours of pain, of fear, of a strength Megan didn't know she possessed. Clara arrived at the hospital and stayed just outside the door, sending supportive texts. Jessica sent flowers and a message. "You've got this, warrior." Every contraction Megan endured felt like a metaphor for everything she had been through in the last few months. Pain that had to be passed through to get to the other side. Darkness that had to be faced to find the light. When she finally heard the baby's cry, Megan collapsed into tears of relief and joy. The doctor placed the tiny body in her arms. "It's a boy, healthy and perfect." Megan looked at that wrinkled little face, the closed eyes, the tiny hands that were already gripping her finger with surprising strength. "Michael," she whispered, "your name is Michael Thompson." The general entered the room, and upon seeing his grandson, the strong, imposing man who rarely showed emotion, let tears stream freely down his face. "He's beautiful, Megan, just like you were when you were born." Michael opened his eyes for a brief moment, as if recognizing his grandfather's voice. In that moment, Megan felt something inside her become whole. It wasn't the end of a story, it was the beginning of another. The following days in the hospital were a blur of exhaustion and ecstasy, learning to breastfeed, changing diapers, soothing a newborn who seemed to be hungry every 2 hours. But every moment was precious. Clara visited every day, bringing home-cooked food and helping however she could. "You're killing it, Megan. Look at you two, perfect together." On the third day, Megan received an unexpected call. It was Patricia, the businesswoman who had offered support on the night of the party. "Megan, I hope I'm not bothering you. I just wanted to see how you were doing and to offer you something." Megan was curious. "Offer me what?" Patricia explained that she had started a foundation to support women who were victims of domestic violence and emotional abuse. She wanted Megan to consider becoming a spokesperson. She wouldn't have to speak publicly if she didn't want to. Just lend her story to help other women. Megan thought for a long moment, looking at Michael sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Can I think about it? I'm still recovering, adjusting to being a mum, but thank you so much for the offer." Patricia understood. "Of course, no rush. But I want you to know that your story has already helped so many women find the courage to leave abusive situations. You've made a difference, Megan, even without meaning to." When they left the hospital, a small crowd of reporters was waiting for them. The general immediately formed a protective shield around Megan and Michael. "No comment. Please respect my daughter's and my grandson's privacy." But Megan surprisingly asked for a moment. "Dad, it's okay. I want to say something." She approached the reporters, holding Michael carefully. Microphones were extended, cameras focused. Megan took a deep breath. "I just want to say that over the last few months, I went through the worst experience of my life. I was betrayed, humiliated and attacked. But I also discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I learned that I deserve respect, true love and dignity, and I learned that it's never too late to start over." She looked down at Michael. "This is my son, Michael, and I'm going to raise him to know that women should be treated with respect, that real men don't cheat, don't humiliate, don't lie, and that real family is the one that supports you in your hardest moments, not the one that attacks you." Her voice was firm, clear. "And I hope my story inspires other women not to accept less than they deserve, to find their own voices, to know that they can start over, no matter how hard it seems." Flashes went off. Questions were shouted. But Megan had already said what she needed to. She nodded with a smile and got into the car with her father and Michael. As they drove away from the hospital, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't a perfect fairy tale ending, but it was her ending, and it was good. Back in the Berkshires, Megan settled into a routine with Michael. Sleepless nights, days of discovery, moments of pure joy mixed with the natural exhaustion of motherhood. The general was a devoted grandfather, always present, but respecting Megan's space to learn how to be a mother in her own way. A month after Michael's birth, Megan received the divorce papers to sign. Richard had agreed to all. The terms: supervised visitation, a generous alimony, division of assets. He hadn't put up a fight. Maybe because he knew he would lose, maybe because he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. Megan signed the papers without hesitation, definitively closing a chapter. Jessica called to congratulate her. "It's over, Megan. You're officially free." Megan looked at Michael sleeping in the bassinet beside her. Free. The word tasted good. It wasn't just free from Richard. It was free from expectations, from the need to be perfect, from the fear of not being good enough. It was free to be simply herself. That week, Megan also got a call from the district attorney's office. The case against Sabrina and Richard had gone to trial. Sabrina was sentenced to community service and ordered to pay a significant sum for emotional damages. Richard lost a substantial part of his assets in the settlement. Helen, though she faced no legal consequences, had become a social recluse, shunned by the same elite she once courted. The news gave Megan a strange feeling. It wasn't satisfaction at their punishment. It was more a recognition that justice, however imperfect and slow, had been served. That her wounds had been acknowledged not just by her but by society. That mattered in a way she couldn't fully explain. Clara organized a small celebration at the General's house. Just close friends, nothing extravagant, but it was perfect. They laughed, told stories, and made plans for the future. Megan announced her decision. "I'm going back to school. I'm going to finish my degree in literature and become a teacher, like I always wanted." Clara's eyes lit up. "Seriously? Megan, that's wonderful. What about Michael?" The General answered before Megan could. "Michael will have a mother who loves what she does, who follows her dreams, who teaches by example what it means to be strong and independent. There's no better gift a grandfather could give his grandson than that." Megan started studying at night after putting Michael to bed. It was challenging to balance motherhood and school, but she discovered she was capable. She discovered she liked the challenge. She discovered there were so many versions of herself she had never explored because she was too busy trying to be the perfect wife. Every book she read, every paper she wrote, was a rediscovery of who she was deep down. The girl who loved literature, who dreamed of teaching, who believed in the transformative power of words. There were hard moments, of course, nights when Michael cried non-stop, and Megan had to study for a test. Days when the exhaustion was so great she questioned if she could do it. But whenever she thought about giving up, she would look at her son and remember why she was doing this. Not just for herself, but to show Michael that it was never too late to chase your dreams, that obstacles could be overcome, that new beginnings were not just possible, but necessary. 3 months later, Megan received an unexpected text. It was from Sabrina. The message was long, apologizing, explaining that she was in therapy, acknowledging the harm she had caused. She didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted Megan to know she was deeply sorry. Megan read the message several times. She thought about ignoring it, deleting it, responding with anger. But instead, she replied with just one sentence. "I hope you find peace and become a better person." It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a release. It was letting go of the weight of anger and resentment that only hurt her. It was choosing to truly move on, because holding a grudge, Megan had learned, was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only poisoned yourself. Richard tried to get in touch several times, always through intermediaries. He wanted to meet his son, to start the visitations. Megan, after consulting with Jessica and the General, agreed, but with strict conditions. Short visits, always supervised, always at a time and place she determined. And on the first visit, watching Richard hold Michael awkwardly, unsure of what to do, Megan felt only pity. He had lost. So much because of his choices. The months passed. Michael grew smarter and more active every day. His first smile, his first laugh, his first sounds. Megan documented everything, not for social media, but for herself. To remember that life went on, that there was joy after the pain, that new beginnings were possible. A year after that fateful Christmas night, Megan had graduated and was starting to teach at a local school in the Berkshires. It was a small school, far from the glamour of New York, but she loved every moment of it, seeing the students' eyes light up when they discovered the magic of words, when they understood a metaphor, when they fell in love with a story. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. One December afternoon, while decorating the Christmas tree with her father and Michael, now a giggling 8-month-old baby, Megan paused and looked around. The simple but cozy house, the father who had always been by her side, the son sleeping peacefully, the life she had built with her own hands and her own choices. "You know, Dad, a year ago I thought my life was over, that I had nothing left, that I was nothing." The General placed a star on top of the tree. "And now?" Megan smiled, picking Michael up in her arms. "Now I know that night wasn't the end. It was the beginning of discovering who I really am, of building the life I want, of being the mother and the woman I was always meant to be." The General hugged his daughter and grandson. "I'm proud of you, honey, more than words can say." Megan rested her head on her father's shoulder, feeling Michael snuggle between them. "Thank you, Dad, for never giving up. On me. For showing me I was stronger than I ever imagined. For being here." That night, after she put Michael to bed, Megan sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, insecure, lost, desperately trying to fit into a world that was never hers. And she looked at the woman she was now. She still had hard days, still had moments of doubt, but she also had certainty that she deserved more, certainty that she could do more, certainty that she was more. Megan's story didn't end with a charming prince or a perfect revenge. It ended with something more valuable. It ended with her finding herself, discovering her own strength, building her own happiness, and learning that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is having the courage to start over, to leave behind what no longer serves you, to build a new life on the rubble of the old one. And as the stars shone over the Berkshires, Megan made one last promise to herself. She would never be silent again. She would never accept less than she deserved. She would never let anyone else define her worth. Because she had learned in the most painful way possible that the only approval that truly mattered was her own. And that approval, finally, she had. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Megan and little Michael's story touched your heart. If you were moved by this brave mother's journey of renewal and strength, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what part of the story resonated with you the most. Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul and the capacity for rebirth that exists in each of us. We'll see you in the next episode.